Yo, what is up guys, Hayes here back with another episode, and today I will be covering a few very crucial tips on improving at Fortnite. These methods will have their own categories as some are similar with one another, and I'll admit, there are quite a bit. Even the best of the best uses some of these various strategies. Now, before the video starts, I'd like to appreciate everyone showing the love on my previous video. It means the world to me, and I couldn't thank you enough. With that being said, let's jump right on into the video. I thought I'd get the essentials out of the way, thus I wanted to talk about having keybinds that you're comfortable with. Having keybinds that match your style is very important. I know you may think to be like the pros you have to directly copy them, but that simply isn't the case. I'd suggest experimenting until you ultimately find the keybinds that suit you. Another thing that you desperately need to improve is warming up. Jumping into a match without any preparation will not give you the results you expect. In order to rank up, you have to play creative maps first, whether it's build fighting, box fighting, aim training, an edit course, or even free building. Obviously, it doesn't need to be all above, but at the very minimum, warm up for approximately 20 minutes. I feel it's necessary to talk about why it's important to stay with your team. Although this should be common sense, some people still don't do this. I know for a fact that your team certainly doesn't appreciate you wandering off until you find a whole team and then blaming it on them even though you didn't tell them. Trust me, I know. One final thing before we move on to things like strategizing and building, let's talk about communication. You need to tell your teammates anything and everything essentially. What I mean by that is there are a lot of things you need to mention to your teammates so that they are aware. For instance, saying that a team is nearby, I'm not with, your current state of health, on me, exactly where you're landing, and even the little things like how many mats you have, your guns, and your heals that you're carrying. Alright, now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about methods you can utilize regarding building. Starting off with overbuilding. I think it's a good thing to overbuild in certain scenarios because you don't want your opponent to box you if you're trying to escape or whatever the situation is. Before you ask, yes, it is good to conserve resources because you have limited protection. That is exactly why it's important to overbuild when it's absolutely necessary. Moving on, we have covering your head. This is extremely valuable to know because I see a lot of my opponents not covering their head, leading to easy shots. Here's a demonstration on a few building techniques you can utilize. Instead of double ramping like this, you can place walls in front of you and whatever side your enemy is on. Another way is simply just triple editing, and if you aren't capable of doing this, I'd recommend using the other method. Box fighting is one of the main fundamentals in terms of battling a player. If your opponent is boxed up, there are numerous ways you can approach them. If you're on top of their box, rather than placing a ramp and trying to take their wall, you can instead do a mongrel classic and then place the ramp in front of their wall. This way they can't fully box you so you aren't vulnerable and you're able to run away when on low health. I also really like using this setup when I'm level with my opponent. You can make it to where your own box is diagonal from theirs next to a peanut butter edit and place a cone in front of their box. This is incredibly useful because they have no angle on you to hit their shots whatsoever. That right there sort of leads us into fake editing. If you aren't familiar with this technique, this is where you edit and re-edit your wall at a quick pace in front of your opponent. Now, the reason why they will without a doubt fall for this is because they think you're going to try and get a shot off. Therefore, they automatically shoot back without thinking. Now that they can't shoot without waiting, this is your opportunity to replace the wall and then edit it again and finally take the shot. It's a lot of mind games, I know, but trust me, it does work. Something I see my friends and opponents doing while playing is never putting anything in their box. The outcome every single time when doing this is the exact same thing. Your opponent will take your wall, place something in your box, and then you're done for. That's something you should be doing to other people. Don't let that happen to yourself. Hell, even Michael used this technique on me and I fell for it. Prefiring is such an enjoyable and efficient procedure to execute. This is when someone is attempting to steal your wall, and at the exact second the wall comes to a breaking point will indicate when to fire. I will say you have to be extraordinarily precise on when to take the shot, otherwise you'll miss. It's a really effective formula to use when you're trying to heal, right when they least expect it. This delays their attack because they have to sit back and heal themselves before continuing. This next one should be something that is relatively self-explanatory. Limiting exposure as much as possible is exceedingly helpful. Whether it's building before healing or rebooting, or something like trying to rotate without being hit, this is where things like tunneling and boxing up comes into play. There are a couple of options you can use to tunnel. You can either place builds all around you, place walls only to where your opponent is so that they can't get shots off, or do the weird stair thing that I'm doing right here. Prediction is probably the main thing to know if you want to succeed in every individual battle you participate in, especially in 2024. What I mean by predicting is closely analyzing and observing your opponent and trying to make your best guess at what their next move could possibly be. For example, if your opponent is boxed up, simply grab height and then using 3-dimensional audio will determine where he may edit out. This way you can place a cone and floor, edit downwards, and then box him from there. Another way you can predict someone is by recognizing any patterns you've noticed fighting against your opponent. He could potentially be using one of the many methods I have addressed during this video. Additionally, you can sit in front of the player's box and watch where they edit. Similar to the first procedure, you're going to do what's called pre-boxing, which is boxing someone before they make a move you think they'll execute. Now that they have nowhere to go, you have the opportunity to eliminate him now that he's exposed to your weapon. Once you learn this tactic, you can practically manipulate any player you come across. Now that you know how to predict someone's movement, this concept to an extent correlates to the next thing I want to talk about: trying not to be predictable. This strategy involves things like editing out while placing builds simultaneously, editing up and placing down walls for extra protection, and doing pretty much anything that you believe will prevent you from meeting your demise. Next up is knowing when and when not to engage in fights. Sometimes you'd see a battle in the distance that you want to third party. This isn't always the best idea. I'd recommend shooting from a distance instead. Keep in mind that this takes place in only a few situations. If you don't have the materials, low on health, not enough ammunition, or if you don't have enough heals. You don't want to have the disadvantage. Additionally, this means to not play too aggressively. I make this mistake pretty often by continuing to fight someone knowing that both of us are low. It's almost like a 50-50% chance that you'll survive depending on your aim. These last two things are going to be more about your mental state during the game, starting with, of course, confidence. You want to have a positive mentality and believe that you can defeat your opponent. Even if you're in shambles, you need to maintain an all-high confidence. This is something that is commonly used by pros that benefits them in every way possible. Lastly, hesitation. You'd want to avoid hesitation because it could lead to you fumbling the game for your team. If you think you're going to do something, then do it. If it fails, so be it. Practice makes perfect. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know if I should post more content like this in the comments down below. Make sure to like and subscribe and turn on notifications so that you get notified every time I release an upload. See you.